Hi, and welcome to CSM Mistakes Were Made. I'm glad you can join me today because I've been wanting to do this video on matching striped socks for a while. I think a lot of people would try it if they knew how to do it. It's not hard. So one of the things I mentioned, and it's all on these directions that I typed up and I'll put on Google Drive as a link. But one of the things you'll want to get comfortable doing is find the repeat in a part of the sock that is reliable. So in the foot or the leg of the sock, you'll be trying to find your landmarks. This is a little bit easier than trying to find them in a complicated area like the cuff of a sock. So I mentioned that in the directions, and you see me doing that in the video. The other thing for the new crankers out there, when I talk about the beginning of the yarn being purple on this pair of socks, well, it sure doesn't look like that. And that's because, of course, the purple is very deep inside where the hung hem is. So I didn't want a new cranker to get confused, and that may or may not have happened. Finally, I'd like to say that there's a little price to be paid if you are into matching socks, and that is you need to wind off some of the yarn that you can't use, because this is the yarn that's right before the color change I need to start the second sock. And I'll use this in scrappy socks or something, so I'm not going to waste it, but you have to be at peace with that. Let's get started then on how to match striped socks. Today I'd like to crank some socks out of this yarn that I found on deep discount at the Minnesota Textile Center here in Twin Cities on the last day where everything was half off. So this skein cost me $3, I believe, and there was no label on it. It looks like nice fingering weight yarn, and it kind of reminds me of something that Active might put out, or maybe Opal. I'm not sure. So I wound it onto a cup, and I want to say a few things more about it before we start. One of the things I did when I got home is I weighed it, and it came out to be 80 grams. So I don't think I could make two good size socks out of this unless I did contrasting heels and toes, which I was prepared to do, but I decided to go a different route. I think I'll make some heel tab shorties out of this, and I thought maybe I could make this into a video about how to match colors, how to match stripes. So I'm fairly certain that this is a self-striping yarn. I haven't cranked a gauge swatch yet, but I'm fairly certain we'll see a definite repeat in the different colors. There's a really nice dark lavender or purple, and then pretty turquoise and yellow, and then a really pretty taupe color. So I thought it would be fun to try to crank a pair of socks that are matchy-matchy. One of the first things to do when you do that is to pull off the first part of the yarn, because what you've got to keep your eyes peeled for is a color change. And I'm going to tell you that I found a pretty good size bit of yarn in this purple first thing. And when I looked very carefully for a color change right here. And it's subtle. It's just basically it goes from the purple to this beautiful taupe color. I think it's easy to see. So I measured with a tape measure this amount of purple, and I measured 85 inches. So I put that down so that now when I sit down and hopefully can do a second sock that matches, I'll be able to find the spot in the purple that gives me 85 inches of purple, and try to make a match that way. So let's get started. Now, ordinarily, I could start the second sock if I didn't care about matching stripes, but that's the whole point of this exercise, is we're going to try to match the self-striping yarn for the second sock. We're going to crank this sock off. We're going to take the heel weights off. and the central weight stack off. Get everything, all the weights off, because they can fly out of your hands onto your feet if you're not careful. Okay, so let's get this off and see what we got. Okay. Cast on bonnet, waist yarn, heel tab. All right, here's the foot. Now, as I promised at the top of the video, what I thought we would do together is consider how we might get the rest of this yarn to match with a second sock. So it's a little challenging, but if you remember the purple yarn, we had 85 inches of the purple yarn, and then that went into kind of a taupe, and then this pretty turquoise. So what I like to do is to try to find that same color in a more less complicated area, and I believe that would be right here. So I believe that this purple going into kind of yellow and taupe, and then a little bit of the aqua, whatever. I believe that's the same as this. So purple to taupe and yellow, and a kind of a mix-up, and then this aqua, which is where the heel tab is, should go into kind of this nice funny field of taupe, and then yellow. So yes, yellow. So we got purple, nothing, you know, kind of funny, aqua, taupe, yellow. Now, so the trick is, where did we leave off at the toe? The trick is, now we have to say, okay, we've got a handle on where the color changes were. So here it is, purple, funny, 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 and then this aqua, and this taupe field. No, let me think about this. Is that purple? Purple and then taupe. Yes, I think that needs to go to yellow next. And so if I'm lucky, I'll grab this, and this is the yellow that this is. Okay, so we left off right in here. Okay, so let's put a needle in that. So this is approximate. I reserve the right to kind of change this, but it's my distinct impression right now is that when we cranked this waist yarn on, we were right getting into a little bit of yellow. And maybe I'll move this up just a little bit. Probably right there. We were right there. So the yarn that's on the spool is this yarn, which is actually, yes, it's a mixture of the yellow going back into the taupe, back into the yellow, back into the taupe. So it's not this solid yellow yet. This is exactly where our toe left off. So the next yarn is all of this, all of this, all of this. We'd have to pull off. We'd have to wind up a fairly large field of yarn in order to try to start at the purple again. So the idea is we left off here, and if we started another sock, that'd be fine. But if I want to try to make a matchy sock, which was starting with purple up here, I will wind off all of this, all of this, all of this, till I get to the purple. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm fairly sure I have enough yarn. These heel tab shorties don't take nearly as much yarn as a full crew sock. So let's give it a try. Let's just give this a try right now. We'll do it together. Okay, just winding off all of this and until I get to the purple. So, but I like to kind of see. So I'm down into this here. Let's see, and then I should get into this a little bit of blue here. blue, and there's actually a little bit of royal blue in here. So we're now into this area. So let's keep winding off, and we are in this kind of multicolored area. And we should get a nice field of that aqua color coming up, which is right about now. So we're in here, and we'll have a fairly large field of the taupe before we get to our target color, which is the purple. Okay, so I've got this fairly large field of taupe now winding off. And now we are into purple. Well, not quite purple. I want to get into a solid purple. We're right, in here, and I need to be solid purple. Okay, now I haven't gotten there yet. Almost there. I think I'm going to say that I've wound off to this point here. So if I'm lucky, I'm going to measure from where it starts purple, and I'm going to measure to 85 inches. So let me wind this off. And there's where the change is, where I noted 85 inches from here to the end. Okay, so without dropping what I just wound off, I'm going to go get my tape measure. I'm going to see where 85 inches is. This should be 60 inches, and I need another 25. So I'm going to keep my fingers where that is, and I need 25 inches right there. And boy, I'm not going to be super particular, but yeah, I suppose if you're really particular, you might be very careful and make sure you're doing it super accurately. There is where I'm going to cut it, which is very interesting. It's really within 3 inches of that other color change, so that is funny. Okay, so what I'm doing now looks scary. I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to show you what we've got. What I did is I wound off that much yarn, which was the yarn that would be between here and roughly here. That makes sense. So that the next sock I start is going to be this purple that happens to be about, let me wind it off for you, about 85 inches of purple. As you see me winding it back to get it ready to start, that was about 85 inches. You can see it right there. When we start our second sock, it should start right there, and we should go into the little heel tab right here and have a matching sock. Stay tuned. Cut this off. Take the weights off. The moment of truth. This was supposed to be a video principally on how to get a match with a striped pattern yarn. And let's see if we've done it. I will crank this off, and we'll get this over here and compare. There was the first one. And I have the cast-on bonnet on, but here's the second one. So I think we've done an excellent job at matchy-matchy. And that is about as close as you can get. For matchy purposes, at least for me, my eye takes me to the heel, and that looks really good. We have done such a good job getting these stripes to line up. And I'll go over it in a sit-down video here in a second, but I am really happy with how this turned out, and I thank you for watching.